Hey fellow gamers, this is Scott from the Super Game Boys, trying out a game called Thomas Was Alone tonight. Let me fiddle with the settings here. I have not played this game yet. The music sounds great so far. I've seen a gameplay video of it. It's a very minimalist puzzle platformer game. From what I've heard about it, the music's really good. From what I've heard about it, the game itself is pretty interesting. I don't know how long it'll be. I don't know how difficult the platforming gets, but we'll go ahead and try it out. If for whatever reason you feel like punching your screen because I end up being terrible at this game, feel free to do it, but any damages caused are your responsibility and not my own. So bear with me as we try this out.
Thomas was alone. Wow, a weird first thought to have.
So it looks like Thomas is a red rectangle. So I'm moving around right now. I've got an Xbox 360 controller hooked up to my PC. I'm moving around with the left thumbstick. Just hitting the A button to jump. It's kind of interesting. You can see the rectangle reacts whenever I jump. It kind of shrinks. And you can see the shadow moving with it. I know the objective is, you can see that outline's the same shape as a rectangle, so the objective is just to throw them in there.
Thomas decided to start listing his observations for posterity. 1. The whole alone thing. 2. Portals. They led somewhere. He'd yet to work out where. 3. Falling. Thomas was absolutely fantastic at falling. He was almost as good at falling as he was at observing.
It's kind of interesting, as the narrator reads, you'll see the words adjust depending on how close to a wall I am or not. And again, you can see the shadows kind of moving with me.
Okay, interesting. Thomas couldn't fall past this block. Think, damn it, think! What if there was some kind of inverted fall? Some way to... what's the word? Jump.
It's interesting with the narrator, since it is so minimalist and they're referring to the block as Thomas. If it ends up being charming the entire game, or if it ends up grating on you as you go along, that'll be interesting to see as we kind of work our way through this.
It worked! Thomas had solved the great inverted fall mystery.
I love the kind of clean look
Big
of the
jump. But Thomas noted
level
there was
announcements
no real
whenever they pop
danger of
up.
missing it. The world didn't want him to fail here. It was pushing him, but gently.
Oh.
This all seemed a little dangerous. The world was not to be trusted. It was unstable, and it seemed to Thomas that it could let him down at any moment.
So that one was kind of interesting. As I
He was starting
moved,
to suspect it might even be doing so on purpose. Nah, paranoia.
as I was saying, as I moved, the blocks underneath me kind of fell apart. So it looks like the environment will interact with us a little bit as we go through it as well.
Thomas wondered whether the portals were actually taking him anywhere. He felt like he was making progress, but there wasn't really any way to know. He seemed to be moving predominantly up and to the right, which might or might not be important. It might have been paranoia again, but Thomas could have sworn the world was becoming more complicated. It always seemed to be one step ahead of his skills.
It's interesting that
It
the
had
first...
been designed just for him. He wondered why. Was the world testing him? No. Too obvious.
It's going to be fun figuring out whenever the narrator's going to talk again. It's interesting that the first couple levels you go through obviously aren't that difficult. I don't know if you really want to call it a tutorial level or a tutorial section, but the narrator kind of just commented on it there. The levels obviously are going to get progressively more difficult. I'm interested to see how much more difficult they get, because right now it doesn't seem like it's that incredibly difficult to go through.
Something about the boiling, toxic, glowing water intimidated Thomas. He didn't like it. He certainly didn't want to swim in it.
So,
He made another mental note. 4. Water. Not good.
so it looks
To
like
be
you can't
avoided.
swim. It's interesting if you'll note the little white blocks telling me that if you pass through respawn points, you save a character's progress. So I'm going to go ahead and try this out. I'm going to throw myself in the water and see if I start back at the beginning or right here. There you go. So whenever you see these, if you pass through them, that means once your character falls, or I don't know, potentially if there's any other ways that you could lose aside from falling into water, then you would restart at this point. It's also interesting to see your block kind of disintegrates as it falls downward. That's kind of cool looking with the blocks left over below.
The loneliness was getting to Thomas. No amount of observation or obsessive note-taking could combat that.
Still really like the shadows that are moving with me. You can see the light source is kind of central to this level, and all the blocks are blocking the light just like Thomas is whenever I jump around.
Thomas had a new theory. The world was training him. He could feel himself getting smarter. There was the mental list to consider. Over the minutes and seconds since his spontaneous generation, he'd become a pretty skilled jumper. He was evolving. He just wished he had someone to share it with.
It's interesting that these platforms are moving with me. The narrator again kind of focusing on the introductory nature of these levels, so it'll be interesting to see how that narrative progresses as we kind of go through. Also looks like I actually get propelled a little bit whenever I jump on top of a platform that's moving upward, so I wonder if motion comes into play later as well. So the little in-betweeners look like they're referring to a computer program.
Chris took an immediate and deep dislike to the skinny red rectangle. Who the hell did this Thomas think he was?
So this is kind of cool. You'll see that the different shaped blocks, it looks like I have a friend now, Chris. Thomas can't go into Chris's hole, and it looks like Chris can't go into Thomas's portal over here, so if you want to switch on the controller, it's the R button, RB button, I should say, to switch between each one. It looks like you can only control one at a time. It also looks like the square block cannot jump quite as high as Thomas either. So let's see if we could use Thomas to help him out here. Okay, and it looks like you can't progress unless the other guy's in his as well, so you just kind of line them up, which makes sense, because if I would have went through the door with Thomas first, I wouldn't have been able to jump with the Chris block.
Chris had been doing fine. He wasn't the highest jumper, but he'd held his own. He'd even been graceful at times. Well, not technically graceful, it's probably the wrong word, but you know, fine. There was that skinny little runt leaping about like he owned the place.
So again, it looks like Chris has reached an impasse due to his lackluster skill that the narrator just mentioned, so I'll go ahead and switch over to Thomas and find my way up. It looks like, again, with Thomas's help, we've got the square block is on his way.
Okay, this was more like it. A glowy white thing. Only Chris could get to it, which of course made it all the more enticing. What would it do? What new opportunity might this switch open up to him?
So as you guys probably saw, I didn't really notice. I saw the white, but I didn't know if it was a portal or if it was, as we found out, a switch. But it's interesting, they've kind of blocked us off to where Thomas can't pass through it because the rectangle's too tall. Christopher the Square, though, can pass right through it no problem, so it looks like he's opening up new avenues, but now he needs Thomas's help to get back up there. So we'll go ahead and do that.
Great. Another chance for Thomas to jump slightly higher than Chris. How fortunate. Seriously, this made the whole switch pressing thing entirely worthwhile.
Gonna have to play a game of Leapfrog here.
Was this good? Because on the surface, it did not seem good. Chris was pretty scared. Little Red seemed fine, happy to be on his merry little adventure. Chris couldn't shake the feeling that things had taken a significant turn for the worse since Thomas had joined him. Sure, he'd been able to piggyback his way to ever so slightly higher platforms, but where had that got him? Well, to ever so slightly higher platforms, which was sort of his point.
So again, we find ourselves having to swap between the two blocks here. As you probably noticed, that time Thomas actually needed help, and again here, getting up to the right platform. Though it looks like I still can't reach it, so I'll probably have to use these blocks along the way. Make sure Chris can get back up to where he needs to go. There you go.
Chris stared at Thomas with pure hatred. He seemed so very happy at their situation. Friends together, a brave fellowship of quadrilaterals on a quest for greatness. That that would be fine. But it was all the obvious observation that Thomas was doing which grated. Every time they saw something vaguely new, Chris would hear a satisfied little from the vaulting idiot. He hoped the next portal would split them up, if only for a few levels.
It's funny that the narrator noted that they're in levels. One thing I did notice gameplay-wise is you could see that I'm bumping into Chris with Thomas, but he's not moving anywhere, so it looks like you can't effectively move one block with the other. I think Thomas can get across this cavern, so let's go ahead and hit the switch. This is kind of interesting. Looks like we have one up route and one down route, but I don't think Chris will do any good being sent through there. One, it looks like he might not even be able to make it across. No, he made it. But I don't think I can make it. Looks like I'll fall right into the water. Nope. Just goes to show you, you never know until you try. The interesting thing will be to see how Thomas finds his way through here. There you go. It looks like we have a new shape with us.
He knew that this was his chance, a moment to shine. This was game day.
And I've got Thomas right now. I can't actually jump with Chris on top of me, so this one's interesting. So I'm going to have to do part at a time here.
This would not do. John needed room to show off his exceptional skills. As it was, he was trapped on the wrong side of these little dot things. Where did they come from, anyway?
So based on what the narrator just told us, it definitely looks like that's intentional. You can't jump with another shape on top of you. As you can see, Chris can't jump with Thomas on top of him. The interesting thing is he can move from side to side. Let's see if it's the same for Thomas or not. Yeah, Thomas again can't jump, but you can move. But you cannot pass or push other people, like I said earlier, so looks like we'll go Tetris style and kind of wedge our way through here. There you go.
John inhaled the air of the open space, and it smelled of awesome. Time to flex those muscles, to put his training to use, time to show those little dots how it was done.
And you can see the bigger the shape, it looks like the higher it can jump, the more mobile it is. It's just, it'll have more difficulty fitting through tight spaces as we progress through, apparently.
John decided to press the switch to let the little dots catch up with him. John cared for his new allies. You could tell from the sympathetic expression he'd practiced in the mirror all these years.
Looks like we need Thomas to play catch up so he can help Chris up another ledge here. And you can also hit LB to swap through characters. Or it moves in order, depending on... So you can see... I see. If you look at the bottom right of the screen, the colors of the shapes are lined up, and that's the order it is. RB moves right through them, LB moves left through them. So that's how it determines which character to jump to next. Snake through here with the little one. And last but not least, Thomas, who needs help getting over the top. So go ahead and send him through first and switch back to John, who can make it by himself. And they're through.
John was happy to keep helping. He felt it was important to his image that he was seen to help the little guys.
So I need to send both red and brown through here. Actually, I think he could probably make it over the top. Let's see. Yeah. That was interesting. It looks like if they're not directly on top of you, you can still impact them whenever you jump. I hadn't realized that. That brown block really struggles getting up some of this stuff. See if I can jump ahead real quick with the yellow block John and see where we're headed.
He didn't mind them so much either. The red one, Thomas, had a charming way of applauding every time John jumped. The angry orange one was less immediately likeable, but his unremitting cynicism and tutting amused John.
I think I'll send Chris through first. Stuck right there. to this point, the music has been very relaxing. I'm interested to see if there's a little more variation later on or not. Got this one under wraps. See how we do on 1.10.
This was interesting. A floating target. This would require coordination, balance, and timing. John was sure the dots would be lost, but he was happy to guide them to triumph.
Based on what I'm seeing here, it looks like Thomas has to go last since his target's in midair.
Maybe
the other ones look like they're
that's what the
grounded.
dots were for. They were there to extend John's reach, to make his performance even more impressive. John liked the thought. He decided to keep them.
So that little snippet there looks like it's implying that more complex either shapes or
This
difficulty will
Claire
come up.
would die. She knew it would happen eventually. She was rubbish at jumping, and she moved slowly. She felt a little like her continued existence was breaking some kind of natural order. The crumbling pillar was a dramatic death, she supposed. Wait, what? Claire couldn't shake the feeling that she was not, in fact, dead. It was at that moment that Claire realised she had superpowers.
So that's interesting. Claire, the giant square, can actually float on water.
She'd need a cape. There was no getting around that. You couldn't be a superhero without a cape. Claire didn't want confusion. If you saw a cape, that made matters clear. You knew what you were dealing with. Claire was all about communication.
And this is
You know, floating in water, which was her superpower.
This is where being able to move with another block on top of you really comes in handy, because you could see Claire, due to being the largest of the shapes we've encountered so far, can't actually, there's no way to get up this. And John, the skinny rectangle, Claire can't even jump up on top of John. So what I did was I came back to this platform here, moved John close enough, and then let John carry Claire right here. You can see that the square is actually big enough to kind of make its way across. What I'm going to do is actually go back, and just to make sure I make it through, go ahead and slide across with John on top. There you go.
All right. Fear not, my skinny friends, for I am Claire, and I will save you. Claire needed to come up with a superhero name as soon as possible. Claire was rubbish.
It's kind of neat rain effects
Claire
coming up on this
arrived
level.
just in time, which It was,
If I would have realized I was already moving on that one.
Claire arrived just in time, which was, of course, the perfect moment for superheroes to arrive.
And Claire can also jump with people on top, which is kind of neat. Except the water's rising. So this one's definitely more difficult than the ones we've come across
Claire
so far.
arrived just in time, which was, of course, the perfect moment for superheroes to arrive.
See if I can move a little quicker once the narrator's finished speaking here. Move to the next area.
As the water began to rise, Claire vowed to save this little rectangle in as many restarts as it took.
It's already taken a couple.
Claire wondered if Thomas would make a good sidekick.
So that one you might have noticed Thomas actually got knocked off of Claire while
Claire arrived just in time.
while I was moving, so
Was, of
I'll have
course,
to be more
the
careful of
perfect
that.
moment for superheroes to arrive.
I'm sure that's why they allow Claire to jump with other shapes on top as well, since it looks like there's going to be more levels where I have to progress like
As the water began
this.
to rise, Claire vowed to save this little rectangle in as many restarts as it took. Claire wondered if Thomas would make a good sidekick. Or was she more the lone Avenger type? She'd like that. The sole hero in a world of rectangles and conveniently placed pools of toxic water.
So it looks like John will have to.
The others told Claire that staircases
Help everybody
were a bit
through
of a
this.
fixture here. Claire wondered why the world made it so difficult.
Go ahead and set Claire in the water and switch back to these guys over here. Looks like that might be it for Chris. I don't know if I need... John will probably have to get to the other side with Claire here. Oop. Of course I can't make it over. So I'll just leapfrog again.
Claire probably needed a nemesis. A villain who would show their true colours at the worst possible moment, hurting all she held dear. Chris was the most obvious choice. He seemed stroppy enough, and his jump was so pathetic that it conveniently avoided Claire's insecurities. Yes, Chris. Diabolical Chris. The fiendish Christopher.
So it's like Chris, the brown block, is the Meg Griffin of Thomas Was Alone, it seems. Everybody wants to pick on him.
Wait. Where had Chris gone? Was he off somewhere? plotting Claire's downfall? If Claire was honest, and she had to be because she was a superhero, this was a troubling turn of events. Still, there were reasonably sized bodies of water to cross.
Looks like I got reset because I got a little too jumpy with Claire. I guess if you go far enough down, then Thomas and John will reset, so we'll have to be careful of that. Just go a little slower and kind of move them along and let Claire catch up, and then move them along. There's Claire's spot. Let's go ahead and move the other two. It's been a really mellow game so far. Obviously, if you're looking for intense combat or fast-paced action, this might not be the best game to play, but if you're just looking for a puzzle platformer with a minimalist twist, this has been pretty pleasing so far.
Moving platforms over water, eh? Claire's newly heightened senses told her that there were multiple paths across with various possible configurations of the little posse.
So the first one didn't look too difficult. The second one looks like it actually goes underneath water. So I'm wondering the best way to go about this. I might just jump with Claire on top of the block here. Slide my way across like that. Now on the last level what happened was I jumped into the water and Claire bounced like this, causing Thomas and John to reset, so try to remember to go a little slower.
Really well. Claire hoped she could get them all across. John was fully aware he could do this alone. Thomas hoped he'd never have to.
It's also interesting that each one of the blocks almost represents like an emotion. It seems like Thomas wants friendship. John's kind of, I don't know the best way to put it. It seems like he's not as bad as Chris, the brown block, but John seems to be definitely a do-it-yourself type person. And Claire's finding a need to show off in front of the other blocks, so I don't know if that'll play out more as we go through, or if that's just something that they intended to do from the start. What I'll actually do here is I'll try and jump across on these top blocks with the other two. I'm not sure if that'll work or not, but here we go. Yeah, we should be fine. Up to 2.9. Interesting that we're blocked here. Yeah, we can't get past that part either, so... Oh, there you go. I actually see spikes here, so again, for the sake of test driving this, I'm going to go ahead and jump into them and see what happens. It looks like we just get crushed, and you'll see the pixelated blocks falling from it.
Which was odd, because she wasn't meant to be alone. She needed to be where there were rectangles to save. Being the only superhero in a given space kind of defeats the object.
And you see...
Spikes? That was new. Claire avoided them. She
decided let the
decided
narrator finish.
they were most likely her kryptonite. Not the rubbish red kryptonite either, the proper radioactive green stuff.
There's a funny Superman reference thrown in there for good measure. as you can see, you can actually move. It's not really weight or gravity based, I guess, because you can move all the way out as long as part of the block is still touching. What I was doing was kind of jumping early at this part, which wasn't allowing me to make it across. What I'll do is I'll wait to the last second here and kind of make my way up. You actually see here the spikes are on moving platforms now as well, and above moving platforms. And this one's interesting, I guess, based on the looks of things. If I veer to one side or the other too much, then that wouldn't be good, so I'm going to shoot straight down the middle on that. It looks like the same level, possibly this time with a friend.
Wow. Deja vu. The world was repeating. And this time Thomas was here. Claire felt something had gone wrong. There was a disturbance in the Force. Something had altered the Matrix. The world was reacting to their progress. It was amassing its forces. It was plotting against them. Claire finally had a nemesis.
One interesting thing I just noticed, I said earlier it looked like Claire could jump with other blocks on top of it, but that must only be in the water where that's the case, because as you might have noticed, I tried jumping with Thomas on top of Claire at this point and it didn't work. It just shot straight off. So I'm going to move Thomas out of the way here. Seem to be going in the wrong way now. There we go. Jump too high here, but I want to get Thomas behind Claire. So I can do this. Swim across. Whoops. It's one thing I've noticed. It's easy to try and accomplish multiple steps at one time, whether it be jumping up in the water while Thomas or one of the other blocks is riding on top of Claire, but the game kind of discourages that, as you'll see. If you get a little too crazy at one spot, it'll make you pay for it. So it kind of encourages slow progression. I don't know if that's really a good thing or not. Up to this point it hasn't really bothered me, but it seems like there's a faster way to do things, but when you try to do the faster thing, it doesn't always pan out. So that little snippet's interesting. It's almost like the world's gonna work its way towards eliminating our crew here. And I'll go ahead at this point on 3.1, I'll go ahead and stop this clip. If you like what you've seen so far, go ahead and jump to part 2. If part 2 is not up yet, then it will be up shortly. Thanks for watching. Please check the comments section in the description of the video. We've got a link to our Extra Life page. That's a great charity. If you don't know about it, follow the link. It helps Children's Miracle Network. It's a gamers charity. It's built for gamers who want to give back. It's a great cause, so we encourage everyone to look into that. And feel free to hang out around the YouTube site. Thanks for watching.